Want to confirm that?
Confirming that we have a quorum.
Well, thank you. So we will call the meeting of the Authority Board to order, and if you will please give your attention to the short video.
Due to COVID-19, this meeting will be conducted as a Zoom meeting pursuant to the provisions of the Governor's Executive Order N-2920, which suspends certain requirements of the Brown Act. This meeting is being live streamed on the CCTA website. The chair will call upon members, staff, and other speakers by name. Please speak clearly and state your name before giving comments or remarks. Persons participating via Zoom with their cameras enabled are reminded that their activities are visible to viewers. Members participating by Zoom wishing to speak should physically raise their hand and unmute their mic when called upon. Members should remute their mics when done speaking. Citizens participating by Zoom wishing to speak should use the Raise Hand feature or dial *9 if participating via phone, and the chair or staff will call upon them at the appropriate time. Citizens will have 3 minutes to speak. A 30-second warning will be provided. After 3 minutes, staff will lower their hand and mute their mic. Participants via phone will be called upon by the last 4 digits of their phone number. It is requested that public speakers state their names and organization, but providing such information is voluntary. Written public comments received in accordance with the COVID-19 Special Notice for Public Comment Guidelines are printed on the meeting agenda. If authors of the written correspondence would like to speak, they should raise their hand and the chair will call upon them at the appropriate time. All written correspondence received after that and during the meeting will be entered into the record. A roll call vote will be taken for all action items. Thank you for participating in a meeting of the Contra Costa Transportation Authority.
Thank you. Terry Ann, will you please call the roll?
Commissioner Arnrich,
Here.
Commissioner Butt,
Here.
Commissioner Glover,
Here.
Commissioner Haskew,
Here.
Commissioner Hudson is absent, Commissioner Mitchell,
Here.
Commissioner Nowak,
Here.
Commissioner Thorpe,
Here.
Commissioner White is absent, Vice Chair Kelly.
Here.
Chair Geringer,
Here.
Representative Allen, did not see. Representative Foley, are you here on her behalf? I show Representative Foley is present. Representative Powers.
Here.
Representative Worth.
Here.
We have everyone present with the exception of Commissioner Hudson and Commissioner White and Representative Allen.
Thank you, Terry Ann. And we'll move on to our next item on the agenda, which is the Pledge of Allegiance, and which will be read by Commissioner Arnrich. So if everyone else would please mute their mics, and Newell, thank you for leading us in the pledge.
Will you please place your right hand over your heart and repeat after me? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Two.
Thank you. So our next item on the agenda is public comment. Terry Ann, have we received any public comment?
We have not received any public comment, and I did want to note that Commissioner Hudson has arrived, and we also have Commissioner Alternate Fideli with us tonight.
Okay, thank you, and welcome to both Commissioner Hudson and Fideli. And no public comment. There's anyone wishing to speak during public comment at this time on items which are not part of the agenda? Please raise your hand at this time and we will call upon you. And I don't see any raised hands. Do you, Terry Ann?
No public comment.
Okay, thank you. We will move on. We do not have any presentations this evening, so the next item on the agenda is the consent calendar. Are there any changes, comments, or other items from the board? Or does anyone want to pull an item? Again, not seeing any hands raised by commissioners. Is there anyone from the public who would like to pull an item on the consent calendar? If so, raise your hand. Not seeing any. Do I have a motion to approve the
Move
consent
to
calendar?
approve.
Motion by Commissioner Haskew and a second by Commissioner Nowak. Terry Ann, will you please conduct the roll call vote?
Commissioner Arnrich,
Aye.
Commissioner Butt,
Yes.
Commissioner Glover,
Yes.
Commissioner Haskew,
Yes.
Commissioner Hudson. Oh, I'm sorry. He's probably not a co-host yet. Let me go ahead and make him one. Okay, Commissioner Hudson.
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Mitchell,
Yes.
Commissioner Nowak,
Yes.
Commissioner Thorpe,
Aye.
Vice Chair Kelly,
Yes.
Chair Geringer.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously with Commissioner White absent.
Thank you. So moving now on to our regular agenda items, beginning with agenda item 8A. We have an informational item presented by Stephanie Hu to provide a program and project update on Innovate 680. So Stephanie, welcome and thank you for your presentation.
Thanks, Chair. My name is Stephanie Hu, Director of Projects at CCTA, and I'm also the Innovate 680 Program Manager. Staff received feedback from the board that there's perhaps a disconnect of information between the Authority Board and the Innovate 680 Policy Advisory Committee. So this staff thought that it would be good to put together a 6-month mini-series on Innovate 680, where the Innovate team can present on specific topic each month to provide the board with relevant information on projects and policies and updates related to the program. Me and Lindsay will be kicking off this Innovate 680 series tonight, where we will be providing general overview of the Innovate 680 program. We know this will be perhaps a repeat of information for some of you, but we're hoping that with new commissioners or perhaps those that have not been following closely to the Innovate 680 program, that we could have everyone on the same page with this series. And with that, Lindsay will be sharing a video first, and then we'll come back for a more formal presentation.
Contra Costa Transportation Authority's Innovate 680 program is a groundbreaking, comprehensive solution to the traffic congestion that affects Contra Costa County. Right now, it could take you 90 minutes to travel through Contra Costa on Interstate 680 during busy commute times. Imagine what you could do with this much extra time each day. Innovate 680 will get us there. Innovate 680 consists of 6 carefully curated projects, each with a specific purpose and all designed to integrate into a seamless system of travel options that will maximize efficiency of travel on and around I-680, creating one fully connected corridor. Part-time transit lanes. Enabling buses to travel on the shoulder in dedicated transit-only lanes and bypass congestion will make transit a more reliable and attractive travel option. Added buses will increase on-time performance. Express lane completion. Extending the existing express lanes from Rudgear Road to the Benicia Bridge will provide 25 miles of nearly continuous northbound express lanes, increasing travel speeds for those choosing to travel by carpool, vanpool, or motorcycle. Advanced technologies. By implementing smart, connected infrastructure like integrated corridor management and coordinated adaptive ramp metering, traffic signals will be able to adjust dynamically and travelers can receive real-time traffic updates. Shared mobility hubs. Using existing park and ride lots as the backdrop, new shared mobility hubs will provide a suite of mobility options catered to your travel needs. Each hub will offer seamless connections between transit and other shared modes. Automated driving systems. Safety data gathered during this pilot project will inform the development of technology that allows infrastructure and vehicles to talk to one another and avoid collisions. This data will also guide the creation of more accessible travel options for the elderly and disabled. Mobility as a service. Combining public and private transportation services will provide personalized mobility options accessible through a single mobile app that will allow you to plan, pay, and receive rewards for your trip. To execute the Innovate 680 program, we've assembled a group of expert engineers, planners, and consultants from more than 15 Bay Area companies to comprise our 6 project teams. We're focused on performance-based, careful planning to complete 6 projects over 5 years. We're also engaging with the public and stakeholders in new ways, like a travel behavior study that will inform the evolution of the program and ensure that what we do will make a difference for all who travel in Contra Costa County. Imagine your life with less time spent in your car, safer roads, cleaner air, and transportation when you need it, where you need it. Imagine gaining extra time each day to do the things important to you. CCTA has a plan for that. It's called Innovate 680. Imagine the possibilities.
So now I'm going to share screen to our presentation. 1 second, bear with me. Are you able to see the slides in full? Yes, okay.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. I know, it's going thumbs up.
Okay. So a program like the Innovate 680 program cannot be done by one agency, and it requires active participation from our partners. And our partners include all the cities along 680, transit operators, Bishop Branch, Caltrans, CHP, FHWA, and MTC. So we wanted to just go over the program structure. This figure shows the structure for Innovate 680. The bottom green area is the project delivery team, also called the corridor management team for the Innovate 680 projects. And I will go over a little bit on the individual projects later on in the presentation. The middle area in yellow is what we call the strategic development team that oversees the project and discipline teams. The top blue area are the committees that provide oversight and leadership for the Innovate 680 program. The 4 committees are the Executive Steering Committee, or the ESC, which is the policy and financial advisory body, and they meet on an as-needed basis, and it approves budget, scope, and schedule. The ESC consists of the executive directors at CCTA, Caltrans, and the deputy at MTC. The program leadership team, or the PLT, meets quarterly and serves as a management body for the program, and it consists of deputy directors at MTC, CCTA, and Caltrans. The Policy Advisory Committee, or the PAC, is made out of local elected officials of the cities along the 680 corridor and 1 county board of supervisor. The PAC members were nominated by the RTPCs, and this committee also includes representatives from transit agency partners. The PAC members are responsible for bringing back any updates, information back to their respective cities and agencies. The Technical Advisory Committee, or the TAC, consists of technical staff from the local agencies and transit agencies. Both the PAC and the TAC are ad hoc committees, and they are where we gather input, recommendations from our local jurisdiction partners. This flow chart shows how decisions are made within the program as issues arise, starting from the corridor management team, shown in green on the bottom, consisting of our consultant teams and project teams. These issues will be elevated up as necessary to the strategic development team. And when needed, issues are further elevated up to the leadership oversight committee, shown in the blue boxes, which I had just discussed on the earlier slide. Critical issues and decisions will be brought to the board, as shown at the top of the flow chart. And when the program tackles significant policy issues or decisions, they will be brought to the authority board for approval and decision making. So Innovate 680 is a performance-based comprehensive corridor approach to meet program goals with 6 projects in the program. The program goals are to improve safety, increase efficiency, prepare the corridor for the future, mode shift, reduce emissions for an integrated seamless travel for the 680 corridor for all users. The program aims to integrate local systems, freeway, transit, and other shared mobility options. These are the 6 projects under the Innovate 680 program. The Express Lane Completion Project proposes to close the existing northbound Express Lane gap between Walnut Creek and the Benicia Martinez Bridge. The Part-Time Transit Lane Project will enable buses to travel on the shoulder of 680 to bypass heavy congestion. Part-Time Transit Lane is currently planned between Bollinger Canyon Road and Ignacio Valley Road. The Automated Driving System, or ADS project, CCTA received a $7.5 million US DOT grant for a 4-year pilot that consists of 3 components. First, the Rossmore First Mile, Last Mile Shared Autonomous Vehicle project that will provide transit accessibility for the senior community. The County Hospital Accessible Transportation Project provides an on-demand SAV shuttle service to bring people to their medical appointments. And third, the improved personal mobility on 680 corridor will help prepare the corridor for future connected and autonomous vehicles. The fourth project under Innovate is the Advanced Technology Projects, which will implement coordinated adaptive ramp metering on 680 between 24 and El Costa in both directions to maximize efficiency of the system. The Share Mobility Hubs project will implement hubs in strategic places like park and ride lots and transit centers to provide commuters with access to multimodal transportation options, first mile, last mile connections, and amenities to really make transit appealing, so we can provide or create mode shift in the corridor. And lastly, CCTA received an $8 million US DOT grant for Mobility as a Service project, which will provide an enhanced 511 mobile app to help commuters make informed choices or decision about their mode choices and with information about travel time and cost. And here are just some quick updates on these 6 projects where we're at. The Express Lane Completion project continues to identify strategies to mitigate VMT induced by the project. The part-time transit lane project is on hold while we perform some strategic program evaluation. Share Mobility Hubs, the project was on hold for a bit, but we have restarted the project. And one of the first tasks is to evaluate whether this project can be used to mitigate or offset the VMT increase by the Express Lane Completion project. The ADS project has had their kickoff meeting a few weeks ago. The MOS project, they're developing scope of work for the micromobility and incentive vendors, and they continue to develop their software and app. And then lastly, the Advanced Tech project, we're preparing for a kickoff meeting with Caltrans for ramp metering coordination. And with that, I'll hand it over to Lindsay.
Yeah, as those who are members of the Policy Advisory Committee saw last week, we are undertaking a travel behavior study as part of Innovate 680, and that's just one of the things that make this project really unique. We have a lot of data about how people travel through the corridor, but we're still trying to understand why they make those decisions to travel the way that they currently do, and see if we can find some methods and means to change their travel behavior. So next slide, please. So with that in mind, we are working with a behavior science firm called Root Solutions based in Oakland, and we did a survey of 50,000 households along the corridor. These are randomly selected households between November 2020 and January 2021. Next slide, please. And by the way, this is just a sneak preview. We're actually going to come back next month and give you kind of the full results of the entire survey. We didn't want to make a Policy Advisory Committee members hear it 2 weeks in a row, back to back. And we, as Stephanie mentioned, we wanted to give a little bit of a refresher to folks who may not be following this project as closely. So of that survey, we had more than 1,500 respondents. And I think what is really wonderful about this is if you look at that number at the bottom, 950 of those survey respondents agreed not only to let us contact them in the future, but to let us link their data across multiple surveys so that we can really find out if we're having an impact, if their travel behavior is changing. It gives us a way to measure our actions. Next slide, please. So this is just a snapshot of the averages of our households that were surveyed. Many of them own their homes. And as was mentioned last week, nearly all of the households surveyed have about 2 of everything in Contra Costa: 2 driver's licenses, a little more than 2 people, 2 phones, 2 cars. Next slide, please. So the folks that we are really trying to talk to are those folks who drive Interstate 680 at least once per week or more. And we really segmented the survey into kind of travel behavior pre-COVID and kind of their travel behavior at that current moment to try to get an understanding of how they were traveling pre-pandemic and their likelihood of kind of going back to those same modes post-pandemic. So as you can see, there's a fair number of residents who use the corridor at least 1 time per week. Next slide. And many of them travel alone in their personal vehicles. That was, by far and away the preferred method of travel. Folks were allowed to select more than one option, so you'll see that the survey doesn't entirely add up, but there are many folks who are contributing to the congestion problem that we're seeing on 680. Next slide, please. The good news is that there are a lot of folks who are really interested in driving less and trying to figure out how to either lessen their time in traffic or help the environment. Next slide, please. And that was actually one of the reasons, the top reasons given. They were, for this question, folks were actually given a list to choose from. The folks who said they were interested in driving less and having less of an impact on the environment and not wanting to sit in traffic were the top two reasons. At a different point in the survey, we actually asked them to just give an unsolicited answer to the same question. So we're in the process of kind of comparing what they said when they weren't prompted versus what they said when they were prompted to see if there is a big difference when they kind of felt we might want them to answer a particular way or not. So that will be something that we'll be sharing with you next month when we come back with the full survey. Next slide, please. And this just, we asked them, what is kind of preventing you from making that change? And as you can see, the two biggest barriers are things that working in the transportation arena, many of you have heard and are familiar with. It's timing. It's never available when I want it to be available. It doesn't match my schedule. Or I just don't feel like it's very reliable. And so these are definitely barriers and perceptions that we'll have to work to overcome. So I'm just probably going to leave you with that little bit of a teaser and know that we will be back next month to share many more results of this survey and show you how some of the responses we've gotten from the survey are actually already helping to kind of shape our projects and how we design them. Next slide, please. You can just skip one ahead. So we have designed a few ways to keep folks updated on what's happening with Innovate 680. The project itself has a quarterly newsletter. This is the most recent one. It was published in the beginning of the year, and we're looking to get ready to publish the next edition. It gets posted to the website. It gets emailed out to folks on our newsletter list. Next slide, please. And all of the editions of the newsletter, as well as that video you just saw, additional fact sheets about each project can all be found on the CCTA website. There's that very large link at the bottom. It's a great resource. We're adding to it all the time. We will be actually adding the data from our travel behavior survey to it as well. So, please bookmark this. It will be a great reference to come back to in the future if you want to know what's happening and what's current with the website. Next slide, please. And with that, I believe Stephanie and I are happy to answer any questions that you might have.
So thank you very much for the presentation. Are there any board members who have any questions or comments? Commissioner Arnerich.
I just want to say, Stephanie and Lindsay, thank you for this. This is great. I know a couple of Sue Nowak and some others were on the advisory. So for the rest of us that are not, this is great information. It's exciting to see the progress. This is a big deal. And I think it's just, it's fantastic that it's moving along so quickly. And I just want to say thank you and a great presentation.
Anyone else have a comment or a question for Stephanie or Lindsay? Are there, Terry Ann, did we receive any public comment?
No, we have not.
And if there are any members of the public who are in attendance this evening who would like to make a comment, please raise your hand.
Chair, sorry to interrupt. There is one person that looks like they're in the waiting room. Terry, is that somebody we should let in? They just have a phone number in case they were interested in this item.
Oh, yeah, I don't. Thank you,
Um,
Newell, but I don't see.
I believe everybody's been let in now. Yeah, the phone number ending in 141.
Yes.
I thought that they were let in, but thank you. So any members of the public, I personally can't see you. I don't know if Terrian could see you, so raising your hand is the best way. Okay, so seeing none, we will move on, but I want to also offer my thank you to Stephanie and Lindsay for that great presentation. A wonderful way to kick off the Innovate 680 mini-series. Can't wait for the final edition and the sequel. So thank you for bringing that presentation to those of us who don't get to see it all the time, and thanks for the patience of the PAC members. So moving on to item 8B, we have an action item that will be presented by Hisham Noemi on the proposed funding allocation policy.
Good evening, Madam Chair and authority members. I'm going to share my screen. Hopefully you can see it. Okay, great. Thank you. My name is Hisham Noemi. I'm the Director of Programming. This afternoon, we are seeking your approval of the funding allocation policy. Before I dive into the policy, I wanted to take a few minutes to provide you with an update on the status of Measure J, as it will help explain why we needed to do an allocation plan. We are now in year 12 of Measure J since it became effective on April 1st, 2009. We still have 13 more years to go before it expires in 2034. And as you know, Measure J expenditure plan assigned funding to specific projects like the Caldecott Tunnel and Highway 4, and specific programs like express buses and your return to source money. If you add up the funding for all the projects and programs in Measure J, it totals $2 billion in 2004 dollars. That is the year the measure was approved by the voters. It's important to note that the expenditure plan did not set priority on which projects to do first. It did not contain a line item for bonding costs, and it did not have a contingency for economic downturns. Unlike the programs in Measure J, where they get a fixed percentage of our annual revenues, spending only accumulated funds on a pay-as-you-go basis, the authority took the strategy of financing the projects in Measure J in order to accelerate their delivery by issuing bonds against the project portion of our future revenues. We were able to take advantage of good construction bid climate, low interest rates, and one-time infusion of state and federal money. This strategy allowed us to build projects at lower costs and provide benefits to the public years ahead compared to a pay-as-you-go approach. At this time, all the bonds have been issued, and 92% of the capital projects programmed in the 2019 strategic plan are either constructed or underway, and we're not even at the midpoint of the measure. The revenue forecast is the most important factor impacting how much Measure J funding a project gets. This chart shows the declines in our revenues due to the economic downturns. The Great Recession, for example, in 2008, had resulted in a 30% reduction in the amount of funding we originally assumed when we developed the expenditure plan in 2004. Despite that significant reduction in revenue, we still managed to deliver most of the capital projects in the expenditure plan by basically leveraging other funds to make up for the Measure J shortfall. This was possible at the time because we had not yet spent our Measure J funds, and we were able to use it effectively as a match. We are fortunate that despite COVID-19, the hit to our revenues in 2020 was much less than feared, only 3% decline compared to an initial expectation of 14%. That the latest numbers from our consultants who does the revenue forecast shows that we are tracking slightly higher than what we assumed in the 2019 strategic plan, which is good news. This is shown in by the solid line on this chart. But since we don't have yet an updated long-term revenue forecast that looks beyond 2023, we still don't know if we need to make further cuts to the remaining projects in the future. That is why last May, the board temporarily suspended Measure J appropriations to the remaining Measure J projects in case we need to make further cuts to address future revenue declines. This table shows the fluctuations in Measure J long-range revenue estimates since it passed. When you compare our projected revenues in the last strategic plan compared to the first one we did in 2007, there is a difference of about $1.1 billion that we are no longer expecting because of the Great Recession. I think it's impressive that the authority was still able to deliver 92% of the projects in the strategic plan with 30% less revenues. We basically managed to do that by following the four-pronged approach you see on the slide, which were to get projects shovel-ready, issue bonds to accelerate their delivery at a lower cost, and leverage other funds. This slide shows the status of projects in the 2019 Measure J strategic plan. 82 out of the 89 projects are either completed or underway. And those projects that were completed or under construction have brought in $1.7 billion in other fund sources, where we only spent $694 million in Measure J. Our leverage rate has historically been about 3-to-1 for the authority managed projects. It's a little bit lower for our partner agencies, closer to 2-to-1. As of June 30th, 2020, the end of the last fiscal year, we expended 90% of Measure J funds programmed to projects in the 2019 Measure J strategic plan. And this chart shows the amount of time expended, which is about 50%, and the actual amount spent. These are some of the projects that we were able to deliver in all 4 subregions of the county. The common theme in all of these slides is that none of these projects were delivered purely with Measure J. We always had to leverage our Measure J funding to attract other fund sources to deliver them. So this is Highway 4 in East County. This is the I-80 Smart Corridor in West County. E-Part Extension, the first phase of San Pablo Dam Road, the Balfour Road interchange. We just completed the 680 southbound HOV project, and we're nearing the completion of the widening of Highway 4 at the 684 interchange. In regard to the programs in Measure J, there are basically 10 programs. This slide shows the status of these programs. As of the end of the last fiscal year, we have spent about 1/3 of what each program is expected to get in Measure J over its life. Only exception here is the West County Ferry program. The Richmond Ferry didn't open until last year, and then COVID happened, so our expenditures are low because of that. In regard to the TLC and PID-BY program, based on the revenue forecast in the 2019 Measure J strategic plan, it is estimated that both programs will have about $142 million in funding over the life of Measure J. To date, we have programmed about $60 million for 86 projects. 72 out of the 86 projects are now complete or underway. I just want to take a couple minutes to talk about sub-regional equity because I know this is important to you. Sub-regional equity has always been a long-standing goal of the authority. During the development of the Measure J strategic plan, each sub-region was asked how to program their share of the $2 billion in anticipated revenue. Their share basically for each sub-region was determined on an estimate of their population at the mid-year of the measure. Because each sub-region had different needs, some sub-region placed more of their share in projects like in East County, while others placed more in programs like in West County. The chart on the left shows the breakdown of Measure J funding for capital projects by sub-region in 2004 dollars. And as you can see, as I mentioned, East County had the lion's share, while West County had the least. That's the way they chose to program their funding. When you look at the programs, which is the chart on the right, the picture is reversed, where West County chose to put more of their share into the programs. When you look at the strategic plan, the percentage of total funding program to projects in each subregion basically resembles the percentages in the left chart. So if you look, for example, at West County and you see only 8% of the funding going to projects in West County, it doesn't mean they're not getting their share of Measure J. It just means that they're getting the rest of their share in funding for the programs. So sub-regional equity in the strategic plan is based on the proportional share of capital projects in Measure J expenditure plan. You can have minor deviations from one strategic plan to another, nothing significant, but for various reasons, like maybe one region doesn't have project ready or did not have projects ready, or maybe the projects in that sub-region are all have been delivered. So by the end of Measure J, however, every sub-region will basically have their share. Nobody's going to take more or less. So with that, let me talk about the allocation plan. Just as a reminder, as you recall, in February of this year, the board approved the ranked list of remaining Measure J projects in the strategic plan and those that are programmed in the TLC and bid by documents. We had two ranked lists. We presented one for locally sponsored project, had 32 projects on it, and another for the authority managed projects. That one had 11 projects on it. And we had to rank the projects to prepare for potential declines in our revenues and basically allow us to target our limited Measure J funds in a way that leverages the most in state and federal money. To help protect secured state and federal money on many of the locally sponsored projects, the board at the same meeting basically approved resuming appropriations to the top 14 projects. That basically reduced the number of local projects on the list from 32 to 18. This list shows the 14 projects that you approved resuming Measure J appropriations to. And as I mentioned, this is the list that will leverage about $54 million in federal and state money. And this slide shows the remaining 18 locally sponsored projects that are still awaiting for their Measure J appropriations. We need about $32 million to move them forward. And the ones I highlighted in green are the ones that we decided to nominate for the MTC's Quick Strike program for funding. And the list continues here. And if I moved onto this slide, basically this shows the authority managed projects. There are 11 projects on this list. All of them need funding to be constructed. We are basically focusing on the top 3 projects that are highlighted here. So let me talk with that as a background. Let me talk about the policy. Why do we need a policy? Well, it is necessary to ensure that we have a process to update the project lists in the allocation plan. We also need to reaffirm that we are prioritizing these projects for future state and federal funding if they don't receive Measure J funds. Also, this policy sets eligible uses for the fund exchange reserve that we are building up. Without a fund exchange reserve, basically the authority will be at a major disadvantage when it competes for future fund sources, since it won't be able to provide the required match. As you saw in prior slides, all of the completed projects were delivered by leveraging other funds So in regard to the updating the allocation plan, which is mainly the ranked lists that I showed you, this policy proposes to update this list twice a year at a minimum to reflect changes in project funding and delivery status. We will also update it every time we come to you for a request for appropriations for one of the top 14 projects on this list. In regard to the future funding, just like what we did last month with the Quick Strike program, the policy basically defines the process on how we plan to give priority to fund the remaining Measure J projects in the allocation plan. In summary, when the authority is asked to nominate projects for funding, staff will work with the project sponsors that have projects on the ranked list to determine if their projects are eligible and can meet the fund source requirements. If their project meets the requirements and is eligible, we will submit it. If there is not enough funding to submit all the projects on the list, which is often the case, staff will rank the projects consistent with the fund source requirements, and only the top ranked projects will be submitted. In the unlikely case that we have more money than needed, then we can submit all the projects on the list and also look at prior calls for projects to identify more projects. And as a last resort, we can always issue a new call for projects to get more nominations. Finally, you probably recall the fund exchange agreement you approved last December with the City of San Ramon. That agreement basically allowed us to program $9.2 million in STIP funds for the Iron Horse Trail project, in return for us keeping an equal amount from the city's future return to source funds. If we hadn't done that, the STIP funds would have had to be delayed for several years because the project they were programmed on wasn't going anywhere. The city benefited by basically getting an interest-free loan to secure the project funding. The authority benefited from this arrangement by getting flexible local funds that we can use as a match to carry out other Measure J commitments. And this slide shows the proposed eligible uses of this reserve, which will be built up over 9 years. And with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions. We are seeking your approval of Resolution 2115P, adopting the funding allocation policy.
Great. Thank you very much for the presentation, Hisham. And are there any comments or questions from commissioners? Commissioner Arnrich?
Really no questions. I think this is, there's been a lot of people that's looked at this to come up with this process as we see the agency and its event horizon in 2034. You're also going to see some good news that's coming from APC recommending some refinancing that we're going to do, getting rid of some of the risks that we've been trying to get rid of, and a way to save money for the agency. So I think our success, as Sean has pointed out, is going to get better. This is a tool that kind of allows us to take advantage of these funds and allocate them to finish up our project list. So if there is no other objections, I would be pleased to recommend that we approve this item as presented.
Okay,
I'll
Do I have a
second Hudson.
who was the second?
Hudson.
Thank you. So before we call for the vote, Terry Ann, did we receive any written public comment?
No written public comment.
Thank you. And any members of the public who would like to comment on this item, please raise your hand. And not seeing any hands raised, Terry Ann, will you please call a roll call vote?
Commissioner Arnrich,
Yes.
Commissioner Butt,
Yes.
Commissioner Glover,
Yes.
Commissioner Haskew,
Yes.
Commissioner Hudson,
Yes.
Commissioner Mitchoff,
Yes.
Commissioner Nowak,
Yes.
Commissioner Thorpe, Commissioner Thorpe, thank you. Vice Chair Kelly,
Yes.
Chair Geringer,
Yes,
motion passes unanimously with Commissioner White absent.
thank you. And thank you again for the presentation and to the, as Newell said, to the whole team for all the work that has been going into this over the last year at least. So moving on to item 8C is an action item. It'll be presented by Jack Hall, and it is on the town of Moraga's request to appropriate Measure J funds for construction and convert their letter of no prejudice on the Canyon Road Bridge Replacement Project. And so Jack, thank you for being here to present.
Right. Thank you, Chair Geringer. Good evening, Chair Geringer and Commissioners. My name is Jack Hall, and I'm the ITS Connected Autonomous Vehicle Program Manager for CCTA. This evening, we are asking for approval to appropriate $362,000 of Measure J funds for the Canyon Road Bridge Replacement Project to the town of Moraga. Before the pandemic, appropriations of Measure J funds for local projects were placed on the consent calendar. However, this appropriation is a conversion of a letter of no prejudice. So the authority approved a letter of no prejudice for the project in July of last year. This allowed the town to start construction using their own funds and still be eligible for Measure J reimbursement if Measure J funds became available. The authority lifted the suspension of Measure J appropriations for this project in February of this year. Town engineer Sean Knapp is on this Zoom meeting and is available to answer any project-specific questions. With that, staff seeks approval of Resolution 2114P, which will appropriate $362,000 of Measure J funds for the construction phase of the Canyon Road Bridge Replacement Project. That concludes my report, and we would be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much, Jack. And Sean, thank you for being here. Are there any commissioners or board members who would like to have any questions or make a comment? Terry Ann, I'm very quickly not seeing any hands. So Terry Ann, do we have any written public comment?
No, we have not received any written public comment.
Thank you. And are there any members of the public who would like to comment on this item? And not seeing any raised hands. May I please have a motion to approve Resolution 2114-P?
So moved. Nowak?
Thank you. And a second.
Second.
Thank you.
Mitchoff.
Yes, thank you. So we have a first by Commissioner Nowak and a second by Commissioner Mitchoff. Terry Ann, will you please call the roll call?
Commissioner Arnrich,
Yes.
Commissioner Butt,
Yes.
Commissioner Glover,
Yes.
Commissioner Haskew,
Yes.
Commissioner Hudson, Commissioner Hudson. I see him there still. Commissioner Hudson,
Yes.
thank you. Commissioner Mitchoff,
Yes.
Commissioner Nowak,
Yes.
Commissioner Thorpe,
Aye.
Vice Chair Kelly,
Yes.
Chair Geringer.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously with Commissioner White absent.
Thank you very much. And thanks again, Jack. And Sean, at least you didn't have to drive a long way and find parking. But thank you for being here. Moving on to agenda item number, letter D. We have a new item to appoint one board member to serve as the authority's representative on CalCog Board of Directors. And I believe, Terry Ann, you are going to present this, or I just move into the, okay, thank you. So first of all, are there any comments or questions from the board, or would anyone like to make a nomination or nominate themselves as the
I'll
resident?
nominate Newell Arnridge.
Did you want to hear my presentation, or
Oh, I
can
thought
skip
you were,
it if that's
oh.
desired as well?
No, please do your presentation. I thought you were pushing me forward with my part of it. So, so Terry Ann, so Commissioner Hudson, if you will please hold, and there's not, we didn't get a second yet, so there's not a.
Nobody ever wants to hear from me.
Terry Ann, go ahead.
Good evening, Chair and Commissioners. Tonight I bring to you a new item. It's an action item to appoint a voting board member to the Board of Directors for the California Association of Council of Governments, CalCog. It is a nonprofit social welfare organization formed to serve regional governments and consists of 49 member agencies. Serving on the CalCog board provides the authority opportunities for building interrelationships between regional and local governments, facilitates communication and information sharing, encourages regions to build consensus, and executes a targeted consensus-based advocacy program that touches on the issues of transportation funding, regional housing policy, economic development, and sustainable infrastructure. It also provides us a collaborative opportunity for agencies to coordinate strategies and transportation policy with the Caltrans, California Transportation Commission, and the California State Transportation Agency. Former Commissioner Julie Pierce represented the authority on the CalCog board until December 2020, after nearly 8 years of dedicated service. As she no longer serves as a commissioner, the position is now vacant. We spoke with Bill Higgins at CalCog, and he stated that we can also appoint an alternate if desired, which was not in the staff report. The term lasts as long as the board member serves as a commissioner on the authority board. The board typically meets 3 times a year, most frequently in Sacramento, and the meetings typically last 2 to 4 hours. The board member is also required to attend the annual 2-day regional leadership forum and may be asked to serve on other CalCog board committees. It is encouraged to attend these meetings in person, but a call-in option is provided. Representation is enhanced if the appointed representative can serve consistently for multiple years. The only requirement is that the member be a voting member and currently serves on the authority board and be formally appointed to serve as the representative. Our options for consideration are to appoint a voting member to the CalCog Board of Directors, or appoint a voting member and an alternate voting member to the CalCog Board of Directors. With that ends my presentation, and I will open up for any discussions and nominations and questions that you may have.
Thank you, Terry Ann. And I see that Commissioner Butt has his hand raised.
I would like to nominate Luella Haskew as the voting member and Chris Kelly as the alternate.
Second, Noack.
Thank you. And so, Terry Ann, so just before we started, I know that Commissioner Hudson, I jumped in. I can call for a vote on this.
No, I'm fighting for Newell.
Hold on. Well, first of all, before you start bringing
Newell doesn't want it. I've seen the look.
Before you bring out your boxing gloves, I was going to go through the process. We can entertain more than one motion, and Terry Ann's going to help me through the parliamentary part of this to make sure that we do this correctly. But right now we do have a motion on the floor that we can vote on. And Commissioner Hudson, I'm curious if you wanted to make the motion and
vote in the order that it was made. Since there's a motion on the floor and a second, and vote for that. And if that passes, it's done. And I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. So.
Okay, well, there you go.
Shouldn't we have nominations as opposed to a motion?
I nominate Luella Haskew.
Okay.
We had it as nominations and a structure for motions. Thank you, Commissioner Mitchoff, but it was set up in the way that it was laid out, and we used this same method at the meeting on the San Joaquin Rail Authority, I believe. So, so as has been pointed out, we do have one nomination, and we have a motion and a second on that. And so, Terry Ann, would you please call the roll call vote?
Commissioner Arnridge,
Yes.
Commissioner Butt,
Yes.
Commissioner Glover,
Yes.
Commissioner Haskew,
Yes.
Commissioner Hudson,
Yes.
Commissioner Mitchell,
Yes.
Commissioner Nowak,
Yes.
Commissioner Thorpe,
Aye.
Vice Chair Kelly,
Yes.
Chair Geringer.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously with Commissioner White absent to appoint Commissioner Haskew as the primary and Vice Chair Kelly as the alternate to the CalCog Board of Directors.
I see.
Yeah.
I was
May I
going.
say some? Yeah, may I
Yeah,
say
I
something?
was going to say congratulations and thank you for agreeing to serve, and also thank you to Commissioner Hudson and Arnridge for moving it forward as well. And of course, Commissioner Haskew, we would love to have you say a few words.
Thank you. Julie left really big shoes to fill, and I am going to do my level best to continue to do that. And I can't think of anybody I'd rather be serving with and have as an alternative more than Chris Kelly. So thank you so much for this vote. I appreciate it deeply.
And Commissioner Kelly, would you like to also have the floor, or I don't want to put you on the spot, but.
Yeah. I'm very pleased to see Luella as our representative, and I will gladly be the alternate. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And so, and again, thank you. And Luella, we all know that you will serve us well, thus the unanimous vote. So thank you very much. And now moving on to another new item, 8E is an action item.
What about the alternate?
Oh, we did do both.
Oh, you did them both at the same time. Okay, all right.
Yeah, you led us off very well, Commissioner.
Okay.
Butt. Thank you. Thank you. Now moving on to item 8E, which will be presented by Hisham Noemi on augmentation of the 2021 Mid-Cycle State Transportation Improvement Program. And Hisham, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to try to keep this short. I'm pleased to report that CCTA will receive about $4.3 million in federal Corona relief funds, also known as CRISA, through the STEP. The CTC is providing the regions with the option to program the new funding through a mid-year cycle augmentation of the current STEP, or to roll it into the new funds into the upcoming 2022 STEP. The 2022 STEP process is anticipated to start in a couple months, and the authority will need to submit its STEP recommendation in September of this year. Staff is recommending that we consolidate the programming of the 4.3 million with the 2022 STEP. We believe we will be in a better position to decide on how to strategically program these funds once the 2022 STEP fund estimate is released in June, and also when we will know about which projects in the allocation plan will end up being funded by MTC's Safe and Seamless Mobility Quick Strike program. We also need to know how MTC plans to program the regional portion of CRESA funds that are flowing through the Surface Transportation Program block grant formula. Contra Costa share of that regional funding is about $5 million. Lastly, we need to see the long-range revenue forecast for Measure J, which is anticipated to become available in June or July of this year. The forecast will tell us if the authority can resume appropriations to the remaining Measure J projects in the allocation plan. Having all of this information will allow us to see the full picture and be more strategic in our decision rather than program the funding in a piecemeal fashion. With that as a background, we are recommending combining the programming of the $4.3 million with the 2022 STIP. But before I take any questions, I want to share late breaking news. It's actually good news. Yesterday, we had a chance to take a peek at MTC's draft staff recommendation for the Quick Strike program. It shows 4 Contra Costa projects being recommended for funding, 1 in each subregion, bringing $7.5 million to Contra Costa, slightly higher than our share of $7.2 million. We also learned that MTC staff will be recommending using the regional portion of CRESA funds to fund more Quick Strike nominated projects while giving the authority the discretion to program half of that to something else if they don't wish to use it on the Quick Strike program. That's good news all around, as far as I can tell. As you may recall, our nominated list of projects for the Quick Strike program asked for $23.5 million in funding. So we are happy to get the $7.5 million, which will fund a portion of this needs. But if we can program even more, that will help us address the need further. So we will see how in the next 2 weeks this falls out. MTC is expected to take action on both items in late May. And there is a presentation to the partnership board this Friday to discuss the staff recommendation. With that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. And just before I ask for any other comments or a motion from commissioners, I do want to just thank the whole CCTA team for all the work that, again, coming out of the allocation plan and the implementation and having the projects queued up, your leadership and your work is positioning us to, have these good news announcements on the various funding sources. And so particularly the Quick Strike through MTC. So thank you very much. And are there any other commissioners who have questions or would like to make a comment? Not seeing any hands up. Terry Ann, did we have any written public comment on this item?
No written public comment.
And any members of the public who would like to make a comment on this item, please raise your hand and we will call on you. And again, not seeing any. So do I have a motion to approve this, to combine the programming of the new CRISA funds and the other funds related to the 22 STIP project?
Glover moves approval.
Thank you. And second, did I hear Commissioner Thorpe?
Yes.
Thank you. So we have a motion by Commissioner Glover and a second by Commissioner Thorpe. Terry Ann, will you please conduct the roll call vote?
Commissioner Arnrich,
Yes.
Commissioner Butt,
Yes.
Commissioner Glover,
Yes.
Commissioner Haskew,
Yes.
Commissioner Hudson,
Yes.
Commissioner Mitchell,
Yes.
Commissioner Nowak,
Yes.
Commissioner Thorpe,
Aye.
Vice Chair Kelly,
Yes.
Chair Geringer.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously with Commissioner White absent.
Thank you. And thank you, Terry Ann. And moving on in the agenda to agenda item 9, our planning committee regular agenda. We have 9A, a new item an action item that will be presented by Peter Engel to enter into agreements to fund implementation strategies from the Contra Costa Electric Vehicle Readiness Blueprint. So Peter, thank you and welcome.
Oh, thank you. Good evening, Chair Geringer and commissioners. I'm sure Tim Hale agrees, and as our former executive director, Randy Iwasaka, we love to bring good news stories to the authority. Roughly a month ago, actually 5 weeks ago, the same day as our last authority meeting, the California Energy Commission actually officially awarded us roughly $2.5 million for implementing several of the projects in our Contra Costa electric vehicle blueprint plan that we prepared under phase 1 of a specific program from the CEC. Of course, we didn't have time to bring that item or couldn't bring that item to you that evening. So we are here a month later to ask for your approval on the funding agreement for the grant from the CEC. I wanted to clarify a few items that were in the staff report that may have not been absolutely clear. We are receiving approximately $2.5 million from the CEC and matching that with approximately $850,000 in matching funds. Those matching funds are coming from the partners that we have in this program, which are the City of Richmond, the City of Pittsburgh, and MCE, Marin Clean Energy, which I think is pretty much known as MCE now, with Contra Costa being the major or the majority board members, and our own 511 Contra Costa program. So none of the funds are new funds or none of the matching funds are new funds from the authority, other than the funds that go to 511 Contra Costa, which are part of their regular TFCA allocation of funding that they use for electric vehicle charging stations. Matter of fact, we're receiving approximately $30,000 in grant funds to cover some of the administration of this grant. So I think so as not to take too much of your time, the tasks are in the staff report along with the grant and matching information. So at that point, I'd be happy to answer any questions. We're looking for your approval tonight to have the chair sign the funding agreement with the CEC.
Thank you very much. And are there any comments or questions from commissioners, from board members?
No, I have here.
Okay, and was there any written public comment, Terry Ann?
No written public comment.
And are there any members of the public who would like to speak to this item? And seeing no hands raised, may I have a motion to execute?
So moved.
Okay, Commissioner Butt, may I have a second?
Second, Haskew.
Thank you. So we have a motion by Commissioner Butt and a second by Commissioner Haskew. Terry Ann, will you please call the roll call vote?
Commissioner Arnrich,
Yes.
Commissioner Butt,
Yes.
Commissioner Glover,
Yes.
Commissioner Haskew,
Yes.
Commissioner Hudson,
Yes.
Commissioner Mitchell,
Yes.
Commissioner Nowak,
Yes.
Commissioner Thorpe,
Aye.
Vice Chair Kelly,
Yes.
Chair Geringer.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously with Commissioner White absent.
Great, thank you very much, and congratulations on the funding opportunity. The next items on the agenda, we have number 10, correspondence and communications. There were materials in our packet. Are there any questions or comments? Seeing none, moving on to agenda item 11, associated committee reports, basically the same message. There were items in our packet. If there are any comments, please raise your hand, speak now or forever. And moving on to item 12, authority, board, and staff comments. For chair comments, I'm going to just let you know that we had a meeting with MTC Chair Therese McMillan, Vice Chair Kelly, Executive Director Hale, Commissioners Glover and Worth were in attendance, and I'm forgetting someone, but I will defer to Tim to do the update on that report unless any of the other attendees wanted to say something under the next item. And so moving on to authority, any comments from commissioners and ex officio representatives or reports on activities and meetings? If anyone has anything, raise your hand. And I see some hands up, Commissioner Worth, followed by Representative Foley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You know, I don't have anything to add to because I can't top Hisham's wonderful news about the MTC staff recommendations with regards to the quick, the quick strike projects. And I did really want to thank Tim Hale for his leadership and, you know, leading these strategic meetings. That list was a result of a lot of, you know, kind of strategic discussion about how can we position our Contra Costa projects in the strongest possible light. And he is, you know, just doing a fantastic job of providing the, you know, the kind of the strategic support to us on the commission, so that we really can, both federal and I can advocate on behalf of Contra Costa projects. So just really want to thank you all very much.
Thank you. And moving on to Commissioner Foley.
Good evening. I
Board
wanted to, no worries. Good evening. I just wanted to give a brief update regarding BART. At our last Board of Directors meeting, staff was directed to look at service improvements starting in September. So we're going to hopefully return to our 15-minute headways and midnight closings starting in early September. And that is all.
Very much. And thank you for being here. Okay, so any other comments or reports? I do see that Matt Kelly, you have your hand raised.
My apologies. I was reacting to the BART frequencies.
Oh.
That's how I plan on getting back to the office.
Actually, and yes, the thumbs up. So great. Thank you. I misread. I was trying to figure out, does Matt really want to talk? But anyway, no, everybody very excited. Thank you, Mark Foley. Moving on, anybody else have any comments or reports? Okay, so moving on to executive staff comments. Executive Director Hale.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Commissioners. Strategic support is only because we have great staff at CCTA. I cannot say enough about the staff at CCTA. Everyone has just been working really, really hard, working countless hours to really position ourselves. There's a lot of funding being moved around right now with the federal earmarks, the regional dollars, and I mean, there's people putting in a lot of extra time to make sure that CCTA is positioned in a place to be successful on funding. And I'm really encouraged, and hopefully we'll get some more exciting news in the future based on some of the federal earmarks that are going around. You know, and one thing I just want to say, whenever I see that Innovate 680 video, I just want to like do a mic drop at the end of it because it's just awesome. Always brings like a tear to my eye. And so one of the things that we've talked on early on was these 4 goals that we have in terms of foster the culture, leverage innovation, drive our future, enhance collaboration. And so what we work together with staff, and this is something that I want to do every single year, is actually develop a work plan that really outlines the priorities and actions to really move and advance those goals forward. And so I'm not going to go through all of them, but I just wanted to kind of highlight just a few items from the work plan that we're focusing on. And this is really based on a lot of the input that I received meeting with all of you in February, meeting with the staff in January. And so it's really a culmination of everything that we've been talking about. And so one of the things that we're going to be doing is really updating and developing our innovation program strategic plan to really kind of set forth a vision for the next 5 years around leveraging innovation, Momentum Station, and setting strategic partnerships. Also data strategy roadmap, launching our countywide transportation plan, implementing the accessible transportation plan, strategic plan, implementing the EV readiness blueprint through the California Energy Commission grant that you just heard about, more engagement, more coordination with our transit partners, and then also more engagement with our community. And so Lindsay's working on a communications plan. And so you'll hear more and more about these things in future board meetings as they're being developed. So the other thing is, you know, regional support and strategic meetings. Like I said, January spent time with staff, February spent time with you, and really in the spirit of enhanced collaboration, March was really the month to start getting out and meeting with our regional stakeholders and partners. And so we met with Secretary David Kim and talked about his California Climate Action Plan for Transportation Infrastructure, talked about how our priorities align with his priorities and how we're setting ourselves up for additional funding in future grants. We also had a great meeting with the executive director, MTC executive director, Therese McMillan, and got to learn about her priorities. And what's good news is her priorities really align with our priorities in terms of, looking ahead towards, climate change, Vision Zero, transit integration. And so those are some of the things that we're really focused on at CCTA. And so, what's been demonstrated by is really through like we just talked about, through these recommendations of the Quick Strike. I mean, the fact that we're putting forward projects, that really align with our regional goals, and having these meetings and understanding what their regional goals helps us pick the right projects to make sure we're securing additional funding in the future. In terms of looking out, towards our local partners, we started doing fireside chats. And so if you're not familiar with those, our fireside chats is really where staff and I sit down with the city managers and also city staff, and we talk about what we're doing, how we can support them, who they know who to contact if they need support, making sure they understand that we're here to partner and also work together to engage with them and their communities in terms of what we're doing to continue elevating our visibility in the community. One of the other things that was really exciting in March was STEM. So I think we're all big fans of STEM. It's really important to us. And so Lindsay and I met with Ignacio Valley, Diablo Valley School District to provide some input in their STEM program. And that was just a fascinating meeting, watching these students. I mean, these are just amazing, brilliant students showing how they're really leveraging that program to really advance technology, and the amount of equipment that's available to them in these STEM labs is just phenomenal. And so the future is very bright. The students are very amazing. It was very, very impressive. And I know that, through the work that we're doing with Lindsay and with Chevron and having these annual STEM events is extremely important. And we want to continue doing that. There's a lot going on at CCTA, as you can all tell. And I just want to kind of forewarn all of you that the next few board meetings will have several items for presentation. And so the next few meetings might be long, but we need to get these items done based on timing and schedule. And we're also keeping a close eye on the recension of the governor's executive order on June 15th and draft legislation to virtual meetings, and potentially preparing for an in-person meeting on June 16th if need be. But I would assume that that's all, the virtual stuff will be extended, but we are keeping a close eye on that. And then lastly, today's a very, very special day. It's Administrative Professionals Day. And as our admin here at the authority is amazing. And I want to give special recognition to Jackie, Fifi, Christina, and Terry Ann. Their dedication, their commitment does not go unnoticed, and a very special to thank them. They are just truly amazing. We would be lost without them. And that concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions or comments? And thank you very much to all of the administrative professionals, as Executive Director Hale pointed out. The agenda items, the calendars are in the packet. And if there are no other issues for the good of the order, we will adjourn the meeting until our next meeting on May 19th, 2021 at 6 p.m. And thank you all very much for being here. And I hope to see you before that date, but we'll see you then. We're adjourned.
Have a good evening.
Thank you. Have a good evening.